Hey guys, it's Toniko Pantoja, and today I'll be talking about how you can draw convincing and genuine expressions on your characters' faces. A skill like this is very useful when you're trying to come up with drawings that convey storytelling, and a lot of the storytelling comes from what emotions the characters are going through and how they can tell us more about the story or the scenario. This is a great skill to have, especially when you're character designing. You're going to make expression sheets of your characters for yourself or other artists and animators to use. And when I talk about genuine expressions, I mean expressions that don't feel generic and that convey more than just an expression, but convey more of character thought, more of character attitude and personality. So right now, I advise you to get yourself a mirror or use your phone and turn on the selfie mode so you can actually see your own face and study the nuances your face is doing while pulling off some of these expressions. So in other words, you're going to have to be able to act and feel what your face is doing. So first, let's look at 5 basic expressions that you can look at. I'm going to be looking at neutral. Neutral is a very gray and idle expression. You can't really tell what the character is feeling. It's just blank. Or in other words, maybe it's your character in their most natural state. The second being happiness, so this includes emotions such as joy, relief, anything that involves smiling, maybe laughing. The third being sadness, so someone crying, remorse. Tears will fall, lips will quiver, etc., etc. Then there's anger. This is pure on rage, just frustration, so there's going to be a lot of teeth gritting, frowned eyebrows, and just the actual snare from this expression. Then there's surprise and shock. So this involves people being startled or gasping. So, eyes wide open, mouths wide open, everything is just open. Now, there's 3 reasons why I chose these 5 basic expressions. One is that they're very easy to read, they can be bold, so it's instantly readable. The second being that they're an extreme of a certain emotion or feeling. They're all different from each other, but they're extremes of a sort of emotion that they're facing. The third reason being that each of these expressions introduce some new nuance in the facial expression or what the face is doing, like what the eyebrows, the mouth, and the eyes are doing to give off that expression. So from here, I'm just going to study some Google images that I've just found randomly online and break them down, and I'll show you guys what I'm thinking about or how I'm studying these expressions. Let's talk about the neutral expression really quickly. So I didn't really know how to explain the neutral expression until I saw this emoji. And one thing I can say about this emoji is that you can't really tell if it's happy or sad or angry. It's just in a blank state. So if we were just to break down this expression and I draw over these with just lines, you're gonna get almost somewhat of a graphic resemblance of that emoji. Nothing is really just, nothing is really flared up. It's just static, it's just blank. You can't really tell what the expression is. You'll also notice that some of the features of these people's faces have different characteristics, such as arched eyebrows. So naturally someone would look more aggressive and angry, like this woman here. Like her brows actually arc downwards towards the nose, so it already makes her look a bit angry. Whereas some people, they have more gentle eyebrows, so it's a bit more straight. Same with this guy. I think this guy has the most neutral expression out of all of these pictures that I found. Again, really blank. You'll notice that all of these sort of have the same neutral expression as our emoji right here. Let's look at the happy expression. One thing that we can quickly point out is how all these individuals are smiling. Now, unlike the neutral expression, we're actually introducing a few more several things on the face that indicate that this person is happy or they're smiling or they're in joy. So if I were just to do draw overs, I'm going to tell you guys what I'm seeing immediately. First off, that smile. So the corner of the upper part of the mouth actually go upwards this way. So that's the arrow indicating that. Depending on the person's genetics, either their teeth, their upper teeth show, or only their lower teeth, or sometimes it's both. It really depends on the person. It depends on your character design too. Another thing that I want to take notice about about the smile, is that the cheeks will actually work with the contour of the mouth and the face. So you get that really fleshy element, or that factor of the face. These cheeks, so if you're actually designing characters for animation, you're going to actually want to think about the squash and stretch. This actually helps things feel a bit more tangible, that squash and stretch. Now, if we were to look at this guy too, we can actually see that squash and stretch happening on the cheeks too. Whereas the jaw, the bone, you know, if we harden that, we can actually indicate, okay, this is a hard surface, whereas the cheeks are more soft, and therefore they're prone to more shape changes depending on how big the smile is. Now, if we look at the eyes too of these figures or these examples, is that because of the cheeks, maybe the lower part of the eyes actually flare up too. And the eyes are more relaxed and gentle. And we'll talk about this the more I break it down even more. This girl here, this woman here, more exaggerated smile. You know, now there's a bit more tension with the eye language here. And sometimes if the smile is really big and the cheeks are actually working with that, the nose will actually start to flare up. So let's indicate that. These are the cheeks. And even though this is a realistic smile, you know, when it comes to character designing, you're going to want to exaggerate it. And we'll talk about that later on too. Sometimes if the smile is like really big and there's a lot of tension, maybe there's a bit more tension in the eyebrows too. So, you know, think about the cheek contour here. This girl too, she has really cheeky cheeks, meaning that there's just more contour on her cheeks naturally. When it comes to like actual character design, you don't have to be incredibly realistic, because the thing about animation is that we're going to actually design characters that may have more bold and graphic features, but these are more realistic. This one's more of a gentle smile. I would say it's very similar to this guy. It's more relaxed. This person has a really great smile, because you can really tell from the shape of her mouth is that the corners of her mouth or the sides of her mouth actually flare up that way, or they go like this. So that's when we get that actual smile. You know, cheeks too, that helps. More relaxed eyes. So one thing I want to point out with the more relaxed eyes is that the fold more visible. It's not, you know, the eyes aren't wide open, so when they're halfway closed, you'll see more of that fold immediately. Now let's look at sad expressions. So these are expressions consisting of people crying or being depressed. And again, like the happy expression, these introduce a lot of new factors on the face. Now we're having more tension in the eyebrows. There's this indication of pain when we look at it. We're introducing how the depressor muscles work on the face. So now the lower part of the lips, the sides, actually pull you down this way. And to really indicate or sell that sadness, you get shape languages that indicate that crease. And if it's really stretching that face downwards, so let's say the force is going this way, there's going to be more contour or more indication of that cheek going down. Now let's look at this kid over here. And this kid, we're looking at this shape language of the eye. So that tension of an eye just going like that and then upwards. So that creates that tension of, it's not angry, but it's sad. It's in pain. If you look at yourself in the mirror and do this expression, your eyebrows will do the same thing too. The sides of the mouth actually go a bit more down, and we get more indications of that depressor muscle over here. Now this dude is, it's more subtle. It's more like he's in pain than these two. These two are just downright, sobbing. But this guy, he's just more in like deep thought and pain. So again, when we're looking at that eyebrow, we're getting this shape language where, it starts going up like that. Milt Kahl does this type of eyebrow a lot on his characters. But it's this graphic shape that's going on. And you can really, really just feel that pain. Even though it looks like she's smiling, there's a lot of indicators still that show that she's sad. So even though it looks like she's smiling, a part of it looks like it's doing a shape that goes like this. Just to feel like it's part of her facial features where, if she may look angry, she may look like she's grinning. It's probably a genetic thing. This is kind of really cartoony here, and it's introducing a lot of things I haven't really addressed yet, which is even though it has the eye tension, most of these figures that I've drawn over had their eyes mostly closed, but this guy, it's kind of cartoony. It's almost like a puppy dog where, you know, he's looking up, so you get a lot of that white. This is, yeah, really, really cartoony to me. Especially here, this is almost like a cartoon now that I look at it. But you can see those depressors in work. And if you really wanted to show that tension, you can show that tension in the chin. If you're thinking about your own chin doing these movements, it's actually flexing. So add those indications. This kid is in turmoil. Very similar to this kid over here, actually. This kid is in turmoil. This mouth shape here is a bit more ambiguous, whereas this one is a bit more clear to me, because you can actually tell that it's coming down, and you get that quiver going on the lower lip. So this actually helps sell it even more. So these are like great examples that I would, you know, look at or think about when trying to come up with these expressions. Here, I'm just gonna go draw over these really quickly so I can show you guys, clarify some of my points, the cheek, the depressors, you know, the chin flexing. And just by drawing over these, it's like, holy crap, I'm learning things that I didn't really think about. You know, this girl kind of she just looks bored. You can tell someone if they look bored or not. But if you exaggerate some of those things that I mentioned, such as that eye and the mouth actually pulling itself down on the lower ends, and that quiver on the lips, it actually feels a bit more sad. Alright, now let's look at anger as an expression. So these are people who are enraged, or they're just mad. So if we look at this and break down each of the facial nuances, clearly one of the things that we'll immediately see in an angry person is the tension and the arched eyebrows that go downwards from going towards the nose. This already indicates that this person is, you know, upset. Now, this is more of a rage to me. It's more of a very powerful expression, but if you can look at this image, notice how there's so much more white in the eyes. So this is just to give the intensity or the contrast of something that is from calm to something that's just so outright mad. And now we're looking at the mouth, and now we're seeing some distinct mouth shapes that indicate a grimace. So besides the wrinkles here, we're looking at the upper corner of the mouths, and notice how they kind of flare up outside towards the outer side of the mouth. You know, now that we indicate, I think to me, when we show the teeth now, we're really showing this person is just mad. Now this one's also a different take. This one's more of a Clint Eastwood style of anger, where you still get the tension of the eyebrows going that way still. We get wrinkles and tension and creases, but instead of the eyes being outright open, this one is more of a squint. It's more of a leer. So, you know, because this expression is so powerful, this model that I'm using isn't as cartoony or enraged. It's more of like concentrated anger to me. But again, look at this. Upper parts of the mouth actually come out this way. But it's not a smile because we have the lower parts of the mouth still going that way. If it was a smile, we'd cancel out that direction and just go straight to a smile like that. But because this person is so angry, we see the corner of the lower mouths going outward this way. And again, with anger, we're expressing more of the teeth. This is just to show that rage. And if you really want to indicate it, you can use wrinkles too. Now, this one's more of a pout. It's not exactly as exaggerated as the previous two models. So this one, again, is doing the squint, but then the mouth isn't open. We see the nose flare out. We see all these tensions and creases by the nose and the eyes. You'll notice this in dogs too when they snarl at you. And now we see the upper part of the lip going up that way. Let me look at this one first, because this one is more of a, you know, a a leer, just a dead stare. This person doesn't really have any strong wrinkles here, but you can still see the tension of the brows towards the nose. And if we look at the eyes, this is someone who's kind of like tilting downwards. Their head is facing towards you more than their face. And what this makes, especially when the eyebrows are going down, is it creates this leering effect where the eyes are looking up or straight ahead, and there's so much like white information between the pupil, or I mean between the actual black part of the eye and the white part of the eye. Now this isn't open mouthed at all, but you can still see like that that tension. To me, what really sells that anger is this wrinkle by the nose and the cheek. Just these things feel angry to me, and then the muscle flexing over there. I feel like this one is more of, it's anger, but it's also concern too, because I feel like the eyebrows are kind of going like that. And if we just break it down, there's so much white space in the eyes too. It would look like that if it was more cartoony. More wrinkles to indicate the tension of the eyes. More of that wrinkle and crease by the nose. And for the mouth, you can see that the upper corners of that actually flare up. Since this is more of a state of surprise, to me, what sells this as anger is just all that mouth information. You can actually see a lot of the mouth than you should be seeing in a person's facial expressions. This one again is as subtle as this girl. Very close to this guy actually. So if we were to break it down, it's kind of like a leer, more white space between the black part of the eye and the actual eyeball. This one's more of a subtle expression of anger. And if you really wanted to sell this, this is subtle enough. This person's clearly pissed, but if you really want to sell that grimace, just add more. I would just indicate more of the snarl between the nose and the cheeks. Now this one, again, is also having more of that Clint Eastwood look to it. There's all that crease. But because there's so much tension going in the face as a body, the eyes aren't really wide open. They're just snarling at you. It's not really smiling. It's more of that shape language going on. And again, that teeth, that grimace of that teeth, to me, again, sells that indication of anger. Now let's look at surprise or shock. And this is different from some of the rage expressions that I showed earlier. With shock and surprise, you'll notice that a lot of these are very similar to each other, but they also introduce some new factors, such as the face just being wide open. To me, this is the face in their most stretched position. To me, this is pretty obvious, but for me, when I think of surprise and shock, I look at expressions that are just wide open and stretched. So let's analyze this carefully. Even the eyebrows are just flared upwards. So the eyebrows are flared upwards. Even the eye itself is really, really wide open. So there's a lot of white space between like the actual eye and the eyeball. Sometimes if the face is really flexible, even the nose would stretch too. So again, thinking about stretch. And this face is just like oh my god face. And if you're animating characters and facial expressions, you're going to realize that between the cranium and the jaw, this together with the jaw being open creates a nice stretch between the actual cranium and the jaw. Same deal with this dude too. Wide open. Everything is just wide open. It's a stretch. If you followed my animation course, I talk a lot more about squash and stretch and how it applies to facial animation too. But here I'm just like really, really selling the point. To me, because it's not really angry, there's no tension in the mouth or the snarl in the mouth. It's just an O wide open. And these guys have it too. It's it's not exactly an expression of like rage or anything. It's more of surprise. So, there's not really tension. It's just like, oh my God. If you were to act it out yourself, you'll notice that your nose doesn't flare out. There's none of the nose like flaring out like that. That's more of anger or real tension. This one is just, here it's kind of relaxed, but it's still a wide open expression, and it might cause some wrinkles or creases in the face. This dude is also really cartoony, by the way. It's almost the same concepts as these two, but again, really, really cartoony. If you really want to sell that surprise, what you can also do is shrink the actual eye itself, or the pupil. So he just looks really surprised, or sometimes even crazy if you think about it. I talked about the snarl. If you really want this guy to be really, really mad, add some tension here, and then add the grimace of things, and then show a lot more of the teeth. Sorry, these are like horrible teeths. You can show more of the teeth like that. But, we're not doing that. It's just a relaxed O face. There's no real tension going on, aside from, the facial expressions being really wide open. So, one of the characteristics you'll find is the eye itself being really, really wide open. So this guy is more subtle about it. It's more in the eye language. So what we're going to do later on is actually break down or redraw, each of the eye or the mouth by itself, and how we can tell these expressions through just looking at those alone. Whenever I study from reference, whether it's a video, a photography, or even a character design or a drawing, I like to gather and break down my notes and give myself reminders of what to keep in mind when recreating these things. So speaking of recreation, let's now recreate these emotions from scratch from our studies. First, let's do the neutral expressions. So for me, when it comes to just the neutral expression, so I'm just going to draw the head very quickly and briefly. I'm just thinking of very neutral, blank, not exactly emitting any sort of emotion right now. So like the emoji that was shown earlier, it was just a blank expression without any clear indication of what this character is feeling. Depending on the character design or the personality of your characters relaxed faces can actually lean towards one side of the personality. Also, that the neutral expression that they carry might have some sort of attitude that does lean towards one side. So maybe someone's neutral expression, if they're bored all the time, their neutral expression would just be more bored looking. I'm just doing these really quickly. So let's say these are neutral. Sometimes if the character has characteristics where their eyebrows are arched, there will be other factors in the face where it's not really emitting any emotion. This is just a characteristics. They have arched emotions. But if you look at their mouth and their nose, nothing is in tension. There's no tension like that. It's really just, it's static. So you can tell if something is in a neutral or relaxed pose if there's no other tension. Some characters, their neutral poses or neutral expressions might consist of them, smiling a bit. But again, you're not really exaggerating any tension here and there. Now let's quickly recreate the happy expressions. Now the first characteristic of a happy expression is the smile in the mouth. So if I were just to quickly draw the head, and I'm not really focused on trying to come up with the most solid head, this is just for expression's sake, is first, the mouth would curve downwards like this, like a smiley face. And then I would think of it as an arrow, a double-edged arrow going like that. So this is one of the most basic ways to show that smile. Depending on the character design, so the eyebrows can be relaxed. And the reason why I'm bringing up depending on the character design is if your character has rubbery facial features or has flexible facial features, their cheeks. This would affect their cheeks. These cheeks might also affect their eyes too, to make a believable smiling expression. Now, there are many ways we can tackle the happy expression, actually. There's the one where the eyes are kind of closed too. So if I were just to draw a big smile with just the teeth, You know, you don't really see the eye open. And when I'm thinking about for the eyebrows for the happy expression is that it's really raised high up and it's really happy. Sometimes the happy expressions can be really, really subtle. And then the eyes itself could just be relaxed. So, you know, sometimes when I want to show relaxed facial features or eyes, I kind of make the eyes more relaxed looking. But this kind of just looks like he's, you know, either tired or really too relaxed. But for happy expressions, I would think of, you know, the cheeks really opening it up. So I'll do one more that's sort of in the lines like this. You can really exaggerate that smile if you really, really wanted to. And again, if your character design has flexible cheeks, you're going to want to treat the cheek as its own piece of flesh. This is probably not the best expression, so sometimes I like to keep working on something. Now let's try recreating sadness from our studies. So with sadness comes with an emotion or the feeling of pain. And when I think about pain and when I look at myself emitting pain in front of a mirror, I'm really paying attention to some of the tensions that my face is causing. So my eyebrows would be a bit more tension. There'd be more tension. It's not exactly, you know, just sad like that. I feel like pain, the tension of pain would make the eyebrows sort of squint a bit and then curve up. So it's kind of like a look of concern too. So depending on how you wanna show sadness, either it's a pain sadness, it really depends. All right, so for the mouth, you know, now we're having our depressors in work. So the lower corners of the mouth here would actually pull the mouth down to create that sense of sadness. What I showed earlier with some of the expressions of sadness is some of them are really, really cartoony, like puppy dog eyes. You can do that too. Usually the mouth for a believable sad expression pulls down from the nose, so it would pull down like that. And then you would exaggerate the eyes, the white part of the eyes. So let's do one where the character is really, really just crying. It takes longer for me to do things like sadness and pain because you really have to feel it out. Now we're doing, you know, someone just like outright crying. Now we get those depressive mouth shapes, pulling the mouth down from the lower corners. So when I'm talking about the lower corners, I'm thinking about these bits of the mouth, and I'm spreading them around widthwise. And again, just showcase that pain. If the mouth is really, really big, you know, you want to emphasize that with the creases of the cheeks and the mouth. And for eyes, it really depends on how things go. It can, you know, it can be like a more relaxed shape. But if it's really downright, really crying, I'd flip it upside down. But again, you can have eyes that are puppy-eyed. Another way of expressing sadness is maybe a sadness of defeat, you know? So that involves like something that's a bit more relaxed. Maybe like the eyes, even though they're still in pain and tension, like the happiness I was doing earlier, maybe you can exaggerate the fold. Now let's try drawing anger. Anger is actually one of my favorite expressions to draw because there's just so much activity of tension and rage, and you know those are my favorite emotions to draw. So when it comes to drawing rage, you know, your eyebrows would classically just go like that. So the same applies for here too. So I'm just gonna draw an outright really, really mad characters, like standardly mad. Usually to show intensity in the eyes, you have more white space in the eyes, and you show a lot of the creases between the flaring of the nose and the eyebrows. If you have a pet dog and you see it growl, you know, you can tell it's really pissed when it starts flaring its teeth and stuff, its nose. And for the flaring of the mouth, unlike sadness where I showed it's the depressors are pulling it down from left to right, now you get that upper part of the mouth lifting up. You still can get some of those mouth movements down here too to really sell that movement, but most of it is you're really showing off how angry you are by the grimacing of your teeth. And then sometimes the anger could just be a downright stare down, you know? So if the head is tilting down, sometimes another tip when drawing convincing angry expressions is usually you have the head facing down. It's to show that sense of aggression. You're just looking down at them, like wanting to beat them up. You can even add, depending on your character design, you can even add creases to the cheeks. Sometimes if the character is like downright enraged, you can really stretch out some of the facial features, such as a squash and stretch. Really open the mouth. Again, I'm thinking about the grimacing of the teeth. And now, for here, the eyes are just wide open. Like this dude's a maniac. He's just crazy right now. So that's one other way of showing someone really anger. And you can even like break the symmetry in the eyes, and we'll talk about that in a later chapter where I do talk about the design element of believable expressions. Here, let's try one more, and this one is more of the Clint Eastwood type of anger, where the character is really just squinting. He can't even open his eyes because he's just so mad. Some people are, everything is just in so much intention. Their eye creases, their eyes, their cheeks. So it's kind of like this really frustrated type of anger. And if you really want to sell that anger, sell this arc even more. Many ways to show some sort of the expression of anger. Now let's do surprise and shock, and this really depends on the expression or the emotion the character's feeling. It can really determine the type of face this character's going to pull off. But usually when I think of shock, and from our studies that we did earlier, the eyes are just like wide open, and the mouth too is just like, whoa. There's even expressions where the shock can be more terrified. So when I think of shock and terrified, I think of those depressor mouths really pulling down. And now there's a bit more of that the straights in the eyes. And then let's think about more enraged. I feel like I've covered this one already, but let's say we do a shock or surprise that's more like just so full of tension. Notice how these eyebrows are soft, but these ones are more, there's more straight. So this feels more aggressive than this. And I think I'm talking about these things way too early on. We're just trying to recreate those expressions that we talked about earlier. So again, that's really more raged or anger. It's not really too surprised. What about a more subtle shock of surprise? It's really the eyes that sell it. The eyes are the ones to me that sell that feeling of shock, whereas the eyes are just wide open. Because like the study that I showed earlier, one of them had a mouth that was just like open like that. But because the eyes, now we're looking at the eyes, they do more of the work. They do most of the work that's telling us this person is surprised or really shocked about something. Well, there's other moments to sell shock too, and this is more of a character acting thing that requires more posing besides the face. So if I had the character, cover his mouth, this is just an acting choice, and then you have the eyes really wide open. Then you can really sell that this character is shocked, but because this person is using other body languages, you're still selling that emotion without having to utilize the mouth. But one thing I do want to talk about when utilizing the mouth is really think about the stretch in the mouth, the jaw and the head, and notice how the lower mouth is really close to the chin. And some might say, oh wait, that's not technically right. There is a case in that too, but someone once told me that, like, if you think of the human anatomy, the jaw actually tilts that way. So, what you're looking at from the front view, and if the character's like even tilting forward too, now that you have this, if the camera is facing that way, you're not going to see too much of the jaw itself, or the chin, I mean. When doing this exercise, I want to remind you that you might want to do multiple takes of a single emotion. Like the references I found for each emotion, each person had a very different facial nuance that they displayed when emitting this sort of emotion. There's many ways to show happiness and a bunch of other ways to show sadness. Don't just have one image of sadness, have a bunch of them in your mental library. And even though I just covered only 5 basic expressions, there's so many ways you can approach each of these emotions. Although the 5 expressions that I chose were basic, you can tell there's a lot of nuances that you can learn from each of them. Next time, I'll talk about coming up with more complex and specific emotions, using acting, performance, drawing strategies, and some advice. But for right now, that's a video for another time. Thank you for watching, and stay tuned for the next part. Interested in learning hand-drawn animation or learning how to finish an animated shot from beginning to end? Have a look at the store where you'll find the complete Introduction to 2D Animation video course, tutorials, and other resources. Learn classical animation approaches, drawing, lectures, techniques, and other process videos. Visit the store through the link in the description below.